I might have been wrong. So just how much does rim width actually matter? Today we're gonna do our best to test this out. Oh, hardtails are still hardtails. Before we get started, I want to give a big thanks to Industry 9. They've kept me rolling in style for a few years now, and they're a really big part of how I can make these videos happen for all of you. Now, Industry 9 makes both wide rims and slightly narrower rims. So in today's video, I'm not trying to promote one or the other. I just want to bring a little awareness to Industry 9 itself. In addition, my other sponsor, Jensen USA, is a leading retailer for Industry 9. They've got a bunch of their wheels in stock available. And I've got a link in the description below over to Jensen USA, where you can order up a bunch of these wheels very easily. Anything you purchase from that link at Jensen will help support my channel as well, so thanks in advance. Beyond that, I'm supported by P&W Components and Shimano. Okay, let's talk about rim width. Back in October, I went down to Santa Cruz again for the first time in years in order to attend the Sea Otter Classic. While I was meeting with the Industry 9 guys, their marketing manager, Dave, said, hey, why don't you compare rim widths? No one's done a video really comparing back to back how the different rim widths actually feel on the trail. I started thinking about it, and I was like, you know what? That's really interesting. I think I have what it takes to make this video. For the narrow wheel set, I'm gonna try an Enduro 305 Industry 9 aluminum rim, and sure enough, measures about 30.5 millimeters inner rim width. The Backcountry 360 is nearly identical to the Enduro 305 in terms of construction. They both use Industry 9 aluminum system spokes. They both use Industry 9 Hydra hubs. They're also both set up with XT cassettes, 180 millimeter rotors. And to further this experiment, I've got matching front wheels for both wheel sets. I know we've got blue spokes on this. It's an Enduro 305 29-inch diameter. On the front of the stylus, I've got a Backcountry 360 29-inch diameter. Both the front tires are identical. They're both WTB Vigilante 2.5 29-inch TCS Tough High Grip. This is comparable to like a Maxxis double down. If you watch the stylus mullet bike check video, one of my biggest complaints is that it didn't ride as smooth as it used to when I had CushCore installed. So I've got two 27.5 CushCore here, and I'm gonna put these CushCore in the back wheels only on the stylus. Both the rear tires I've got are identical. They're WTB TrailBoss 2.6 27.5 TCS Tough Fast Rolling. Oh yeah, I guess I'm gonna have smaller front tires than back tires, but it's not gonna be a big deal. I got 2.5, 2.6, it's close enough. Obviously, I need to redo the rim strip on the Enduro 305 wheel, so I'm gonna put a new rim strip on here, and then I'm gonna build both wheels with the CushCore and the 2.6 rear tires.
The wide angle's great.
You're using it right now, I can tell.
Yeah.
I thought you were watching Matt's off-road.
I watched that this morning.
As a self-designated lab rat, I went ahead and did 3 runs on a quick section of trail. In this case, it's a jump trail, or maybe you could call it a flow trail, depending on what part of the country you live in. The first wheel set I tried out was the more narrow 30.5 millimeter inner width setting. Despite the adage bigger is better, I've ridden these 30.5 millimeter inner width rims for quite a while, and my favorite wheels with the carbon 31 mil inner width work just fine. In short, I'm not a fanatic to have the absolute widest rims possible by any means. So after 3 runs on these wheels, I went ahead and swapped over to the wider rims. And right away, my expectations were totally wrong. Check this out.
Oh, there's the difference. First run on the wider rims, and I was not expecting it to be that noticeable. This jump trail, it's been pretty hammered by the weather recently, and it's pretty bumpy. It was noticeably smoother with the 36 mil inner width rims than the 30. So I thought I wouldn't be able to tell, and this whole video would be really hard to pull off, but yeah, way smoother on all the braking bumps and little holes.
You're at similar tire pressures?
We should probably check that right now. Let's do that.
This is a question many of you have, so let's get into the tire pressures.
I had 25 for those runs. Now I'm at 24. Up front, I'm at 22. So I was at 22, 25. I just changed it to 22, 24. Let's go check the wide ones. One thing I don't want to mess around with is having the same pressure on both wheel sets, because that's not realistically how you're going to ride the wider ones. You're going to go down a couple PSI in order to get the right benefits. Because if you test something just in theory, it's gonna be not accurate results. So let's set this up real world and not do some hypothetical thing. So back here, I'm at 21 and a half. The world is watching. What pressure was it? Oh, this was very low. This was only 17. So we got to go way up on this. Good thing we were Boy Scouts and we double checked our pressure. If anyone else here is a Boy Scout, hit the like button. If you're an Eagle Scout, leave a comment. I earned my Eagle Scout in 2003. Here I am putting air in tires, almost 20 years later.
I wonder why it was so much smoother.
Well, it felt like in back, there was a bigger difference more than the front. Because the weight bias on this bike is so heavily towards the rear wheel. People are gonna have a field day in the comments for this video. Since we're at 24 and 22 on the skinny rims, let's go to 22 and a half or whatever on the fat one and back, and then 20, 21 up front. It'll be pretty realistic pressures. 22 and a half, which with the wide rim feels very similar to the other pressure in terms of not bottoming out, tire on rim, jump landings, takeoffs in the corners. All right, run 2, wide rims, fixed tire pressure.
This right here is why I wasn't too concerned about the exact tire pressure to get things started.
Oh, still there. It's still so much smoother.
Now that I have really normal tire pressures for both wheel sets, the difference in the actual feel is still quite significant. When I added air to the wider rims, it did not make it so much bumpier that all of a sudden it was more bumpy than the narrow ones. In fact, it was similarly plush as when I still had a lower pressure in it.
I'm blown away. I thought the difference was gonna be the other way, that I would prefer the narrower on the jumps. In my head, I'm thinking if you get berms and jumps, the lower volume, it's more predictable. And that's what I've experienced over the years, but truly doing the A/B test, I might have been wrong. This wider rim setup felt pretty darn good. Let's see if this difference between the wide and the narrow continues to last when we go hit some actual trails. Test number 2, a very twisty section of trail. My goal here is to see how the difference in cornering is between the wide rims, which are on the bike now, and the narrower ones. Hardtails are still hardtails.
Furthermore, there are 2 pretty good hucks on it. One of them's to flat, and then there's the second one into a corner where I normally burp a rear tire.
It's gonna test more the actual grip of the side knobs of the tire. Then it will test how the tire is gonna resist burping and folding over. So I have my first case of feeling the dreaded tire squirm, almost burping, with my rear tire in this final jump to downhill right-hand berm. That's the spot where I have burped many a tire over the years on both the old Ibis wide rims, these Industry 9 narrower, the Carbon Industry 9, or the Carbon WR1 rims that I have on most of my i9 wheel sets. So that's a pretty tough corner for any combination. Got a little bit of squirm with that back tire that last run though. First squirm I felt all day. We'll see if the narrower setup has more squirm, less squirm. Let's see how it compares. Kind of a score 1 for the narrower rims was the corners. It felt like the side knobs were able to dig in a bit more aggressively. It was easier to get the bike left to right, to lean it over into the turns. And between those 2 things, I felt more confident to give it a little bit more pump. This could also be me being more used to these turns, having logged a few runs. But the biggest difference besides that initial drop was right here. So right here, I like to pop off this little water bar and then land right as you carve into this berm. And with the 36 mil rims, I felt the rear tire fold over and collapse underneath me. I don't think it actually burped any air, but we're gonna measure. And then with this narrower one, I didn't know what would happen either. It did not feel to me like it was folding over and burping. It might have. Logan said that it did fold over, but it wasn't nearly as noticeable. Even after 3 runs of hitting this corner the same way, the narrower setup felt more reliable and more supportive and more solid in this harsh turn, smash into a corner situation. I'm so stoked at this difference being that noticeable. I want to try another section of trail before we move on to the 3rd testing zone that I have in mind. Air pressure, ooh, still at 24 PSI. I know from experience, if you run the same air pressure, it feels way harder on wider rims. So, all I wanted it to be realistic and run the pressure that I would run in real life. 23 PSI. 23, 24, not that much of a difference considering 5.5 mils extra width. This is legit. If you guys are impressed at our very legit test, hit the red subscribe button just below. This is a real fun section of trail. I'm hoping we can kind of test how the different rim widths react to all the roots we're gonna smash through, and there's a couple more corners to kind of try in addition to the ones we just did. Oh. Oh. And right here is the corner. Oh, that felt good. In this section of trail, the difference that I felt the most was when I hit the roots. That impact was a lot less jarring with the wider rims than the small ones. The downside of wide rims to me has always been twofold. One, when you hit something like a root or a jump, it can burp and let out air. And thus far with the modern tough casing tires, 2 layers of 60 TPI, like 1100 gram tires, and then with the CushCore in back, I've not been suffering that issue of burping this on the roots, on the corners, anything like that. The other issue I've experienced in the past with the wide rims is those tight corners. Like what we saw in the last test, the wide rim was the one rim that had the tire collapse, almost like it was gonna burp on that hard impact into the turn. I wanted to shoot this because the last corner, it's a super tight little left, pretty steep berm, you can really push into it. And you know, I pushed into it pretty good that last run. So proud of myself there. And I supported just fine. It felt great, actually. So the hardest thing for me has been that cornering, pushing hard. These ones almost have too much traction and they kind of fold in unpredictably. The narrower, smaller tires felt really good in the turns too, almost like they're more efficient when you're pumping, and almost like the side knobs get a little bit more weight into them and they dig in a little bit more. So is there a clear-cut winner? So far, I don't know. I'm not really complaining about the wide ones like I have in the past. The narrow ones, I'm not complaining about those either. They're both pretty good. That was fun. So right here we have one of the last remaining skinnies on our local hill. And I've always thought that a wider rim might create more stability, which might make for an easier time on a skinny. I don't actually know this for certain though. So today we're gonna kind of find out. This isn't really a super narrow skinny, but it is icy slick because it's been raining for the last month nonstop. Somehow today the sun came out. We're gonna try it on the wide rims first and then throw on the skinny rims and see how it does. What do you guys think? Are wider rims gonna make any difference on a North Shore skinny? Let me know in the comments down below. What do you think, Logan?
I don't think so.
No difference?
No difference.
All right, let's see. So the narrow rim, surprisingly enough, on the skinny section, actually felt a little bit easier to me. I don't know what's up with that. It felt like I had a touch more control. It's a little hard to describe, but it was like I was a little bit more connected to the skinny itself. I could feel the bumps a little bit more, but it was just a little bit easier to handle it in a straight line. Opposite of what I was expecting. So here on the skinny test, the difference between the wide and the narrow is much less noticeable than on the rocks, the roots, the corners, the jumps. And all that, I could totally feel how much cushier the wider rims ended up feeling. And then I could feel the cornering difference where the narrow rims kind of almost had a touch more control. Here on the skinny, I felt more connected to the skinny itself with the narrower rims. I wasn't expecting that. I thought it would be easier to just straight line and monster truck through it with the wide ones. But for some reason, I just felt a little bit more vague with the wide rims on the skinny. And with this, I felt just connected and like I was right on my line. I want to give a big thanks to Industry 9 for their support this year. Industry 9's been a huge part of my program and they make really good stuff. I'm not here trying to sell Industry 9 product in any shape or form. I'm just trying the two things that they offer. If I was buying rims, what would I get? Narrow or wide? It depends on how I ride, where I live, what my bike's like. It's not like just a clear-cut answer which to get or whatever, but I've been really enjoying trying them both and I've learned something here. So I'm kind of actually grateful for all of you enabling me to come out here and spend a day trying different wheels back and forth. Everyone give a big thanks to Logan who tore it up behind the lens. Hi guys. Oh, Logan! If you are looking for new wheels, Jensen USA has a big stock of Industry 9 product and I've got a link to Industry 9 wheels over at Jensen USA in the YouTube description just below this. Anything you happen to purchase while you're at Jensen will also help support these videos, so thanks in advance. Okay guys, if you enjoyed this video, please hit the red subscribe button, and with that, I'll see you in the comments. Toodaloo. Hi guys. Oh, Logan! That was classic. I'll grab that bike.
We heard you guys. She fell in the mud and then I avoided it.
And I'm not gonna fall in the mud. That's classic.